Right. For those of you that weren't in the previous session, I'm from Aston University. I'm here with a few of my colleagues, and we've undergone a radical change in the past few months, and we're closing out our first implementation of CDIO. And that's not working. I'll press the button. That'll do. There we go. So, just a few key points about what I'm going to cover today. Who we are and why did we change? Oh, that's quite important. How we've gone about our change. It worked for us. I thought I'd share that with you. And a couple of the measures, a couple of things we found in the process of changing. So, who are we? Well, we're Aston University. We're a small green campus situated in the heart of the UK. And we're home to around about 7,000 students and 1,500 postgrads. We're quite small, but perfectly formed. And we study, or our students tend to study, technical science-based degrees and business. And we've just completed the first year of introduction of our CDIO program, which we will be rolling out onto later years, but at the moment it's just been implemented at level 4, which is first year undergrad. And it is common to all design and engineering programs which we run, which comprise approximately 100 students. And at the time of implementation, we had 16 full-time equivalent academic staff and 9 technical support staff. Naturally, that has now changed, so we've got some fun times ahead. Because as you can imagine, those numbers haven't gone up. Right, why did we change? Well, firstly, we found our students generally were students. They lacked engagement, motivation, but we did find that when students came back from an industrial placement, they were full of vim and vigor and excited and really they figured out why they wanted to be an engineer or a designer. They lacked a confidence in their abilities and, importantly, were reluctant to commit to a design, a concept, a solution, or an idea. And they tended to procrastinate until the decision was made for them, either as a result of time pressure or sitting with a blank face in front of an academic who would eventually give them their decision. And there was an apparent failure of students to learn from mistakes because they didn't make any because their decisions were made for them. So fear of making mistakes was quite rife. And we did find that they were numerically capable, but reluctant to apply their skills to problem solving. They couldn't identify cross-disciplinary links. So they couldn't apply their thermodynamics understanding in other modules, if you like. They took the opinion, oh, thermo, so I'll avoid anything to do with thermo. Now, we didn't want this for our students. We thought they're better than this, surely. And this is kind of our statement of what we wanted our designers and our engineers to be. Mostly, we wanted them to be inquisitive and be passionate about solving problems, because as a faculty, we are. We love solving problems, and which is why CDIO came quite nicely to us, because it was a huge problem. We want them to embrace fast-changing nature of engineering. So we didn't want them phoning us up after they graduated to tell them about the new stuff that's coming out, or to tell them where to look for things. We wanted them to be able to do it themselves and to have a sound understanding of engineering science within the context of current tools and social issues. But we weren't getting that person. And so we took a look at the program. And this is how we did train our engineers, how we used to train them. It was predominantly didactic lectures, much as I'm doing now, sorry. I was told to do. Supported by practical laboratories. And on this graph, I've kind of roughly metered out. In the red is where they get exposure to practical subjects or practical activities. and in the blue is where we're lecturing at them. And as you can see, in year one, semester one, there's a bit more practical than the rest of the program, until you get to the industrial placement year, where it's very practical. As you can imagine, they're quite ill prepared for the industrial placement because there's not a lot of practical stuff going on. And then they get to year three, semester one, where it's straight back to the old model. And then in year three, semester two, when they're doing the final design project, we're asking an awful lot again. So we're not preparing them very well. Or I thought anyway. So how did we go about making our change? Obviously, since I'm here, we're here, we decided for the CDIO model. But what we decided was it's no good making a little change when you can make a big one. So what we did is we took what were predominantly 10 credit modules in each year of study and thought, that's no good. We looked at the ones which weren't engineering science, ones which had just kind of crept in because the accreditation body said, don't you think we'd be doing that? And we thought, well, yeah, I suppose. So we got rid of those and we wrapped them in to more practical modules. We introduced large CDIO modules, replaced typically 3 10-credit modules at levels 4 and 5, which provided the opportunities for the students to take what they'd learned in the engineering science lectures and apply it in the context of design, build, test. Hopefully, we felt this would provide better alignment between our learning and teaching methods and the desired engineering and design skills, things they would be wanted or would be expected of them when they hit industry. And then we decided, let's go all the way. So we've made it worth, the CDIO modules are worth 50% of their first and second year. Quite brave, I thought. But this is kind of a nice woolly diagram generated by my good friend Christian McLennan, which shows really the structure that we've got. So here we've got the engineering flavor of programs. On the right, we've got the design flavor of programs. And in the middle, spanning the two, are our CDIO modules, being common to the two. So where we've got specific engineering science requirements for the engineers, they're catered for over on the left, and similarly for the designers. This happens in year 1, year 2, and it leads on immediately to the industrial placement year in year 3. We're now, as I said, the semester comprises math and engineering science tuition, as it always has. Sometimes the classroom is just best for that kind of thing, but the large themed modules were delivered thus. So we have a weekly 8-hour CDIO session, at the beginning of which the students will come in. They'll be given a few exercises, some mini lectures or micro lectures, explaining some engineering science, which we will immediately follow up with an activity. But over the day, these activities will be aligned to a practical activity at the end of the session. So we'll all build in intensity and in duration till the closeout at the end of the session. So each week, they will be going through the CDIO loop, if you like, sometimes more than once, and sometimes a partial completion of that loop if it's staggered over a few weeks. I hope that made sense. It kind of made sense to me. And the other thing we thought we'd do is one thing we noticed about our old program, and it was a major frustration, and that was every man was an island. I teach CAD, you teach thermo, you teach solid dynamics, or solid mechanics, sorry, and no twain shall meet. And don't you tell me what to teach. I know my subject. And that really wasn't working because the students were seeing us, they were seeing the subject. They would ignore everything else. when I saw my students outside lectures, they'd completely forget what I just told them in the lecture because they were no longer in my lecture. So we decided what's better is if we've got a team of a couple of academics, and it doesn't really matter who, but we have 2 academics manning each session. The other thing it lets us do is it lets us collaborate when we create the material. So, I mean, again, we're all engineers, we're all designers. We know the basics, we know what the students need to be getting, but we've not necessarily got the best ideas on how to get that message across. And bouncing off one another as you create the material and as you deliver the material in a very Jerry Springer style means that you can get much more out and possibly better quality teaching and learning experience. And the way we'd operate it, because obviously you don't want to tread on too many toes, you can do that behind closed doors. But within the session, we have a lead academic who is controlling the delivery of any material and the pacing of the session, because in an 8-hour session that can be a lot of work. But the support academic can watch, see what messages are hitting home, which aren't, offer supplementary explanation. One particular group are struggling, you can then dedicate all your time to them without holding everybody else up. So the 2 academic team teaching approach has worked very well for us. The other thing we thought we'd be quite brave about is the activities we teach or we facilitate have no previously prepared model solutions. Again, we didn't want students to be able to stare at us blankly for long enough until we give in and tell them the answer. Because when you get bothered, you're a busy person, you've got a lot going on, this person's occupying your space, your time, you want them out of the way. And eventually, you'll hit the point where, okay, this is 47. So instead, we don't have a clearly defined model solution that we can ultimately give to them. We can support, we can give guidance, we can give advice, but there is no model solution, so we won't give it. And every session closes out with a reflection. It's vital that the students are given the opportunity to stop and think, look back, and take forward whatever they've learned in the session. And we formalize that formalize that in a semi-structured way by getting them to complete a reflective blog, which they posted online, which we could take a look at, we wouldn't grade, wouldn't assess, but later on we tried some extra tricks with that, which is all detailed in the paper. Give it a look. Now, one question that always comes up is assessment and feedback. How do we go about that? Well, we tried all sorts. Pretty much we left ourselves free to experiment with all manner of tools, tricks. If we read something, we thought we'll give that a go. But the core ones really settled in on, were the turning point voting system, weekly in-class tests based on preparatory reading material. They worked a treat. We're happy with those. It gave us an opportunity to see who's doing reading, who isn't, and to encourage those who perhaps need a little bit more motivation to do the reading. Reflective blog entries and project logbooks. And usually, the operate activities would have a progressive grade. So early on, they didn't mean much towards the final mark, but as we got further in, when the mistakes had been made and learned from, it started to matter a little bit more. One thing we found is when we had 2 academics, we had twice the facility, twice the time to go round all the groups. We could talk to them, get to know the individuals, to see the problems, the kind of things they struggled with, and we could get some very good instant feedback to them and feedback from them on how they were doing and how well we were doing at getting the messages across. Obviously, some sessions that was less possible because we were a little bit busy, but on the whole, we managed to do this quite well. And in addition to the student blogs, we had a reflective staff blog, because we'd have different academics running each session each week. We needed a way of communicating the experiences between us. And so we'd all post on the academic blog, this group seems to be struggling a little bit, or I'm struggling a little bit. I think I'm running short of time, so I will quickly skip through these. These are very pretty pictures of people doing things as part of CDIO. Great stuff. And the other things that I was asked to put in specifically were program sustainability. It was a key concern that making a change, we would be able to, in terms of academic resource and financial commitment, we'd be able to progress. We'd be able to carry this model forward. Now, naturally, it's going to be a bit skewed because we're having to write everything afresh. But there were some distinct time and quality advantages to collaborative preparation. Get the material prepared much more quickly with the two of us. And we also made a note of the money we were spending and the amount of time the academic and technical staff were using. And so far, we found that we've not significantly increased staffing costs, despite the increased session length and the use of two academics. We have increased the amount and quality of formative and summative feedback. We've reduced the formal assessment load by around about 55%, which was great for us, but it's hurting me at the moment. And we had a 37% reduction in the learning space requirement, because instead of having 3 separate lectures, we had 1 lecture room which we used all the time. So we didn't need extra laboratories, everything happened in the same room, we were happy. And also when we looked at the module grades at the end, the number of non-attempts that we'd had from previous years went from around about 16 to 0. So everybody at least tried something. And we reduced the number of individuals failing by 50%, whilst maintaining the same level of academic challenge, which we were quite pleased about. But this is my favorite one. We've incurred a materials and consumables cost for the entire year of equivalent to £12.20 per student. Across 100 students, we thought that was marvelous. Good things, students are more motivated, engaged and proactive. They are keen to do extra work, and to our cost, they often work through coffee and lunch breaks, which means we go without. But they do respond quickly to instruction. We ask them to start, and they start. There's no dancing around, oh, I don't know. They get stuck straight in. And they do now demonstrate strong problem-solving skills. So they think and work creatively and respond well when we ask them questions. And we've seen that not only do they respond well within our sessions, but also in other didactic lectures that they still have. So they're a lot more confident about themselves and in front of people. Negatives. Some of them don't like it. Some students aren't so keen on the fact we're not listing facts. They don't like that at all. I'm guessing they like to memorize things, go into exams and write out the answers. But since there are no correct answers, they've got nothing to memorize, they're struggling a little bit. And some, I do find that the sessions are a little bit long. And we are noticing within our groups, getting the cruisers, but I think you'll always get that. But we're looking at ways of remedying that. And getting them to focus on learning rather than gaining the marks is going to take a bit of time. It does take a lot of work, but it's giving us an opportunity to identify and remove feudal boundaries. I'm no longer the CAD man. You're no longer the solid mechanics man. We're working together. We're training people. We're doing our best for them. And we did find that enforcing strict budgetary limitations did cause or did create a lot of creativity, and in the end usually meant our activities we developed were better than our first ideas. So being squeezed on the budget really helped with quality. Now, not all of our staff have embraced CDIO. Some are quite scared. The guys that have been doing it a while are not so keen. And many tell us on a regular basis that that's what I do with them anyway. Possibly not, but I'm not about to argue too strongly yet. I'm new to this game. And I think fundamental to success is for more of our staff to see what this is all about. Impact within the university, we've been approached by 3 other departments who want to take on our learning model and try it out. I'm particularly impressed with pharmacy, and they're working really quite hard to get it to work. And we've also been asked by the Engineering Academy, which is in creation at the moment, to help guide the creation of their programs. And we've had a lot of industrial interest as a result of exposing our industrial collaborators to what we're doing. So if nothing else, industry likes it. So we're quite pleased with that. I think that's probably a good point to stop. Thank you for your time.